Hey there, my mystical little cherubs. Thank you so much for returning to my channel and spending some time with me here, hanging out with me on my couch in the middle of the night, in the wee hours is when I'm filming this. I want to talk about some insights, contemplations, tips, etc. I want to share some musings and some thoughts just from one little English witchling who is trying to get through the weirdness, the wonkiness, and the woe any which way I can at the moment. So I want to talk a little bit about things I've been doing that have been helping me, comforting me, and hopefully some of this stuff will land where it might need to land for anybody watching this. I have definitely put off making any kind of resource of this nature. I know that I did something to help people with their nerves and their feelings about the run up to the election. I do offer Tough Times, Tough Cookies live streams on my Facebook, and I will be, uploading them to YouTube as and when I do them on Facebook. So you could say I have tried to kind of offer insights and help as we move through this ongoing collective shit show. But at the same time, I have found for the first time in my career that I have built for myself that I have genuinely been wondering, is anything that I would have to say of any merit whatsoever? Is it really going to be of any use whatsoever? Is it really something that people even need to hear or could do anything useful with? Or should I just shut my mouth and go back into my little hermit crab shell? Which I have kind of been doing on and off for the last few weeks. You know, the hermit crab shell has definitely been there. But I decided that I feel that the desire that I have to at least reach out and try to make something of some use and try to create a resource that may have the potential to help is what I should follow, and it's what I should believe in. I should go with that. That is a good motivation. That is a good driving force. And so I'm going to trust in that impetus that I have to make the resource that is going out to you right now. I think a lot about some of the things that I see listed over and over again in online resources. So for example, if you Google articles and blog posts and lists of things to do to keep sane during this difficult time, how to deal with all the stuff going on in the world, you know, how to make sure that your well-being is taken care of during this ongoing weirdness, mental health during the pandemic, mental health during political upheaval. I think about the things that I see over and over again repeated on those lists. And some of the things that you see on those lists are definitely things that are valuable to me. You know, like I do think it's really important for me that I make sure that I limit the amount of time that I spend saturated by the news and limit my time on social media in general. I think that's really useful. I think one thing that's useful for me is gratitude, and I do recognize that there's a major shadow with gratitude, that, you know, toxic gratitude is definitely a real thing. I think that it can be a way that we force each other, ourselves and each other, to kind of downplay the toughness of what we're going through. So I don't want to fall into that, you know, shadowy trough of like just plaster some gratitude on it, you know, just bandage some gratitude over it and it's all fine. But I do find that a practice of gratitude has been really useful for me. So that's something that often comes up on these lists that I have definitely found is useful for me. But what I don't want to do in this video is repeat things that I see that come up over and over again on these lists. So I know that there are a lot of resources out there at the moment, a lot of videos, a lot of blog posts and stuff, articles, trying to help people to deal with this ongoing stuff that's happening, that just seems to be endlessly playing out. It seems like we get absolutely no reprieve at the moment whatsoever. I wanna see if I can talk specifically to things that have been useful for me and that I have been putting into practice, and try and talk about things that are perhaps a little bit less discussed, things that you may not have seen elsewhere or had that much opportunity to think about. The first thing that I want to say is that I have been doing a lot of work on how I regulate my emotions, how I experience my emotions, and what I tell myself, the stories that I tell myself about my emotions. And I wanted to share this with you because it's been particularly helpful for me in the last few months, actually. So for a long time now, I have been very much aware that my emotions are not necessarily a decent barometer for the truth. And I've tried to operate within a system where the emotions that I experience are valid, and I try to sit with them and I try to let them unfold. I try never to have any emotions that are forbidden, that are taboo, that are absolutely off the table, because I tend to find that that is unhelpful and unhealthy and it leads to dysfunction. and it leads to things just building up and then coming out in a really not very healthy way in the end anyway. So I try to always remember that every emotion I'm experiencing is valid and I can sit with it. At the same time though, just because an emotion is very strong, very compelling, even very repetitious, does not mean that it is a good barometer for the actual truth. So for example, if I feel a really overwhelming sense of hopelessness, that does not necessarily mean that everything is hopeless. If I feel a really strong, overwhelming sense of shame, that does not mean that the truth is that I should be ashamed. They're emotions. They're going to pass. They are tidal. And some of the tides, when they come in, they feel like they're never going to go out again, but those waves break and those waves recede and different emotions come in. That is just literally the nature of it. So I try to remember that, and I try to maintain an awareness of that even when it's difficult to do so. And sometimes I'll do that by speaking out loud if I'm going through a very overwhelming or intense emotion and it feels very repetitious and I feel very almost alarmed by it, or I feel like it's never going to end. I try to remind myself, that it's not going to last forever, and also that it is not a good barometer for the truth necessarily, but there is validity in it. I should feel that I can sit with it and I can acknowledge it. A few other things about emotions that I have found really useful for me in my own journey as I've been dealing with the ongoing collective situation as well as the personal stuff I'm going through is that, first of all, I do not need to talk about my emotions all the time in order to support myself through them or to have them validated. I also do not need to justify my emotions. So if somebody doesn't understand the emotion I'm going through, or they're trying to convince me out of the emotion I'm going through, you know what? We're just in different places. We're experiencing different things. And it doesn't mean that what I'm experiencing is invalid or what they're experiencing is invalid. We're just in different places. And sometimes I have needed to shut certain conversations down when I feel like I'm being put into a defensive state. I feel myself going into the defensive state where I'm trying to justify the emotions that I'm having about something. And I want to be really real with you guys in this video. So I want to give an example of this. A few days ago, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about just some of the stresses that I'm feeling about the pandemic, about the situation in this country with the way that the government are dealing with the pandemic, just the ongoing crisis essentially that we are having, the worries that I'm feeling on a number of different fronts. And my friend that I was talking to was in a very chipper mood on that particular day about, progressions with the vaccine rolling out, feeling like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, there's hope and everything. I was not feeling that way at all. I was having a lot of very vexed feelings, lots of anxiousness, lots of nerves and anger. And it was difficult because I basically felt like, after talking for a few minutes with this friend, I felt like, okay, I'm going into a defensive position where I'm not feeling like my friend is really hearing me or trying to really deeply empathize with where I am, because he's trying to do something else for me. He's trying to remind me of the positive things that are happening, the changes that are occurring, the tide that is turning, etc., etc. And I'm not there. That's not how I'm feeling. And so I'm feeling like I'm not being heard, and he's probably feeling like he's not being heard. And also, if he's feeling like he's in a great mood, why would I want to take that from him as well? Because I know that he struggles with mental health and emotional well-being and emotion regulation and all that kind of thing. So if he's in a good way, if he's feeling great about stuff and I'm not, then first of all, continuing with this conversation is just making me feel like I've got to justify why I feel so bad, why I feel so angry, why I feel so stressed. And also, I might be dragging him down a path that actually it's not useful for him to go, because right now he's feeling good and I don't want to take that from him. I'm glad that he's feeling good. I just don't necessarily feel the same way. So I actually said to him, you know what, we are talking at cross purposes here. I'm feeling like I've got to explain to you emotions that I'm having that I feel are completely reasonable. And he was like, yeah, I agree with you. Those emotions are completely reasonable. There's no doubt. Like, I totally get why you're feeling what you're feeling. And I have felt what you've been feeling. I was like, okay, cool. Well, that's where I am right now. And I respect that that's where you are right now. But obviously, like, this conversation has ceased to sort of have any usefulness. Let's knock it on the head, essentially. And I didn't say it in a rude way, but I felt like that was really what I needed to say, because I was being put into this position where I felt like I needed to explain and to justify and to have somebody else tell me it's okay to feel what you're feeling. And actually, you know what? Nobody has to tell me that it's okay to feel what I'm feeling. I can give myself that permission. It doesn't need to come from anyone else. So I wanted to put that across as well, that like you can sit with your emotions, you can recognize that they are not necessarily a good way for you to figure out what the truth is about something, because the emotions can be very overwhelming. They are tidal in nature. Other things are going to come in. Sometimes your emotions might be hyperbolic, or they might feel very overwhelming just due to how repetitious they are in nature, how strong they are, the physical feelings that you get when you have the emotions. And that's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to honor it as the absolute truth, nor does it mean that you have to completely ditch it and you know, never think about it again, pretend it's not there, plaster over it, ignore it, repress it, you know. And I wanted to say that also you don't have to have conversations about those emotions. You don't always need to get the validation or the permission slip from somebody when you're feeling something. You can just feel it. You can go through it with yourself. That's not to say that you shouldn't reach out for support, but you don't need to reach out to have somebody sign off on what you're feeling. It's okay for you to feel what you're feeling. Something else I really wanted to say about emotions is that sometimes I do think that there is some usefulness in timing emotions. And this is something that I have done myself that has been beneficial. And it's also something that I've talked about with clients. Timing emotion is something that I initially learned about in bereavement counselling techniques. So there's this idea of timed grief. So if somebody is experiencing very overwhelming bereavement that is stopping them from being able to dress themselves, wash, go to work on time, you know, feed themselves. So basically it's veered into complicated grief, and it's having a very difficult effect on them physiologically and mentally. They can employ this technique, timed grief, which is where you try to keep your grief within certain time parameters. So you might say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling an extremely deep grief. I'm feeling this massive loss, this massive sense of mourning, but I've decided that I'm going to try to keep those feelings within the hours of like 1 and 4. So I know that in the afternoon, I'm going to give myself that time to sit down, cry, scream, punch a pillow, journal, call a friend, all of those things. And you kind of see that time on the horizon in your day, and you think to yourself, okay, I'm not going to break down now because I've actually allocated time to break down later. I know as you're listening to this, you might be thinking, Kellyanne, that's barbaric. You can't just tell somebody to fucking time when things are going to happen, you know, when overwhelming emotion is going to come through. And to be honest with you, that was my initial reaction when I read about this technique. I thought to myself, you cannot just time your grief. You can't schedule time for an emotion so overwhelming and so all-consuming. It turns out I was wrong. You can absolutely do that. It's not a perfect science, of course, but it is very useful and workable if you've got things to do and you do not necessarily have the ability to be overwhelmed with and consumed by an emotion all day, because you have young children, because you have a job that you need to do, you know, because you have somebody that you care for. So I sort of started to lean into this a little bit whilst talking with some of my clients, when I felt like they might need to time a specific emotion and their processing of a specific emotion. And I got really good feedback from my clients on that. I had quite a few clients tell me that it really worked for them. So I started really using it a lot more for myself. And I can tell you that it is very workable. It is quite a useful system. Sometimes when I'm just feeling really, really, really angry about the situation at the moment, especially, well, I was going to say especially in my country with what's happening with the pandemic, but actually, frankly, in the last few days, I felt angry about a lot of fucking shit. It's not like UK only or England only or whatever. So yeah, when I'm feeling very, very angry, that would be a really good opportunity for me to time that emotion, to get that emotion and schedule it within certain parameters in the day so that it doesn't bleed out into everything, because that's an emotion for me that I think over the last few months I've found does tend to bleed out a little bit into everything, and it goes into all these different areas of life and it kind of poisons things. So I want to acknowledge my anger. I don't want to paper over it. I don't want to pretend it's not there. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I find that to be so shadowy and unhelpful. I do not want to repress the emotion of anger. But what I try to do is to say to myself, oh, I've got anger from 4 till 6 and I'm going to fucking do it to death if I want to. I'm going to really rant and vent and angrily journal and I'm gonna go do some firework at the cauldron. That's a really good way for me to vent my frustrations and feel satiated afterwards. I'm gonna bitch to a friend who is on the same level as me and angry or whatever, or will just let me vent. You know, so God, I wish I could hit a punch bag or lift really heavy weights. I really miss the gym. The gym was a way that I got out a lot of my anger. But you know what? You can get your pavement smashes on and you can go hit the streets. You can fucking pound that pavement, all right? Smash that sidewalk. And you can do your anger that way. You know, do some press ups, whatever. I find angry working out to be quite good. Anyway, basically, I know that emotion is there, but I also know that I do not want it to have the run of me all day. And so that would be a good time for me to time my emotions. So that's something that I've been doing, baby cakes, that maybe you might want to think about if you find that there is a particular emotion that is really taking over for you right now, whether it's fear, whether it's sorrow, whether it's anger, whatever it might be. Please know that you can actually sort of set you can put a rope around that emotion and say, yeah, I walk into the pen of this emotion and I do it, but I do it at this time. It hasn't got the run of me all day, because that wouldn't be healthy. My hair is so fluffy today. All the fluff. Goth fluff. Goth fluff for life. Okay. Yeah, so another thing I wanted to talk about, baby cakes, that's been helpful for me, and this is kind of, I guess, more of an obvious one, but it really has been so helpful for me lately, is just really connecting as much as I can with the incredible joy of remembering what I had forgotten and also exploring what I've never come across before. So it's really celebrating the things that I've loved for a very long time, but I haven't really put my focus on for ages, but also experiencing the new, you know, stepping into those parts of the garden that I have never come across before and enjoying what I find in there. So lately I've been going back to a lot of poetry that I have really loved to read in the past. I recently reread A Season in Hell by the French poet Arthur Rimbaud. It's sublime. It's as sublime as I recall it being. And I'm going to go back into his collected works fairly soon. I reread The Great Gatsby, which was amazing. But I'm also picking up on new things that I'm enjoying. I've never really gotten that deeply into Charles Baudelaire. Amazing poetry, just absolutely stunning. So I've been really, really devouring The Flowers of Evil and just loving every moment. I have been learning about a lot of different painters that I've been aware of, but really not hugely knowledgeable about their work. I've been reading a lot of stuff about Hopper and looking at a lot of his paintings recently and just more deeply reading into that. I have discovered the works of Joan Didion during this lockdown period. I've always known who Joan Didion is for the longest time, but never read anything by her, never really understood why she's so important in the American journalistic tradition, didn't know anything about that first article that she wrote or really anything like that. So I watched that amazing documentary about her and I've been reading some of her books and I'm completely in love. So yeah, it's really just lovely to remember again the squelchy mud that you used to love dancing around in and go back to it and think about it from the position of where you are now and how much you've grown over the course of time and what you think about it now, and just reawakening those memories. Another poet that I've been revisiting is Sylvia Plath, who has been with me for a long time and is very important to me. So that's been really lovely to reread her poetry. I've been learning about some periods of history that I didn't have quite as good a grasp on, learning about some things that I just never knew about before. I have been reading a lot about the Freedom Riders, and that's been incredible to learn about. So many important figures in the civil rights movement that I didn't know about, I've been reading up on, which has been great. I've been learning about sort of certain key figures in various time periods. I won't go into it all because that's not what this video is about. But yeah, it's been really cool to just learn new things as well, become interested in new things. I've been revisiting old music, but I've also been trying to discover new music. There's been a lot of revisiting things that I haven't listened to for years, but also the wonderful feeling of like finding new gems now and going, oh wow, I've never heard this before. This is absolutely an eargasm and a half. Good gravy, turn that up. So it's giving myself those gifts that I don't have to leave the home for, and they're at my disposal. It is possible for me every single day to revisit something I used to love, and also to turn my mind to something that I didn't know anything about and to educate myself on that. And so I suppose when it comes to gratitude and when it comes to really thinking about what is still so beautiful and still so potent in my life journey, that's one thing, well, two things basically that I try to keep in mind. I can rediscover what I'd forgotten, and I can discover what I've never known before. Let me know down below in the comments, what have you been rediscovering that you used to really love, whether it's a band or a book or a video game or whatever. Let us know down below, what have you been getting back into, and what have you discovered during this weird, wonky period in the human story? What have you gotten into that you really just didn't know about before? Yeah, I would love to know. And if you think there's anything that I would be interested in, anything you think I would like, please tell me. I have definitely gotten back into vanilla chai during this lockdown, which is lovely. Oh, sometimes I just like to leave it until it is stone cold Steve Austin and then just gulp. Absolutely heavenly. For the last few years of my life, it's been of great importance to me to be as honest as I possibly can about my mental health, my emotional well-being, and also my physical well-being, especially with having a spinal injury and having chronic pain. I will say that I was not always super honest about times where things were difficult for me, where I was having mental health issues resurfacing, where my well-being was not as it should have been. And part of that is because I haven't wanted to worry people in the past. Another part of it is because I have wanted, I think, to project a certain image of being, so capable and so past the worst times for me. And I don't think I wanted people to associate me in any way with those really, really tough times. I wanted to be seen to be completely, in the all clear and very much past all of that. And even when I would be frank about the fact that I will always suffer from depression, I believe, I don't think there's really going to be a way to completely delete that from my life experience. Even in saying that, there have definitely been times in my 20s, for sure, where I was not honest about when it was affecting me to the degree that it was. I don't do that anymore. I try to be as honest as I can. I try to be super candid camera about what is going on with me. Is that difficult sometimes? Yeah, sometimes it's not all it's cracked up to be. Sometimes I have reached out for help from a friend and I have said certain things that I feel, and this is me be completely honest now, sweethearts, because I want to be really candid in this video. I feel that if somebody else had said those same words in a phone call or on a WhatsApp message, the person reading it or hearing it would have dropped immediately what they were doing and been, I'm ready. Can I speak to you now? Do you need me? But when it's me, it's interesting. It can be a different vibe. And I'm not saying that all of my friends or partners have been this way, but certainly there is almost this feeling that people have in my life that they're very reassured that I'm okay. Kellyanne, she's got it together, Yeah, she has her bad days, and part of what she does is to be honest about the fact that she does have depression and she does deal with these issues, but she's basically okay. Like, we don't have to worry about Kellyanne. She's not going to relapse into an eating disorder or self-harm or any of those. She's not going to. We don't have to worry about her really questioning the value of her own life at any point. And you know what? A lot of the time, that is very true. I'm really a rather stable person and I'm very fortunate. I've got amazing resources and I have learned so much about how to tap into those resources. I am so lucky to be able to have the connection that I do with my creativity and with my spirituality. And even when I feel like the ability that others have to understand some of the darknesses I might be going through is not there, I have things I can do, but it is difficult. You know, there have been times where it's not easy for me to say, I really need help, and to put my hand up and be like, wow, I'm going through a really serious time here of needing help. Because sometimes that help is not forthcoming in the way that I would hope it would be, and in the way that I would always give it to that other person. That's the other thing, isn't it? It's about lack of reciprocity. It's about knowing that when it's time for you to collect, you're actually not receiving as much as you have given out to others. That's a really difficult thing sometimes. But look, at the end of the day, one thing that really helps me is just to keep being as honest as I can, and to know that it's not healthy for me to hide away when I feel that I'm going through a difficult time. In the past, I will admit that there have been certain times in the online sphere where people have said that they do not think that those who go through issues like depression or anxiety should be giving tarot readings or should be offering spiritual guidance or mentoring. And that has actually made me quite angry when I've heard people say that. My life and the things I do, my abilities, my talents, my passions, my hobbies, etc., do not stop at any point because I suffer from depression. In fact, sometimes the things that I do with my work, the readings that I give, the conversations I have with clients, if I'm going through a period of depression, those will be some of the high points of the day, where I get to invest myself in somebody else's story, plan strategy with them, aid them in their healing journey, and really put my skills that I've developed to good use. That is an amazing way for me to get some reprieve, a break from my depression, actually. When I go into that energy with a client and we're being co-creative in that way, that is a really wonderful thing for me to feel when I might be going through my own difficulties. The idea that I should not be giving that kind of help or that kind of co-creative experience with somebody because I've struggled with depression is ableist. That is ableist. I assure you that no matter what you do in this life, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a school teacher, whether you are a painter and decorator, whether you're a gardener, whatever the fuck you do, if you've got 3 kids under 10, your life cannot stop because you go through bouts of depression. That sounds like a very privileged and far-fetched idea that I should be able to stop what I do as a vocation because I'm going through some difficult depression. I mean, of course, there is a moment in time where I have to say to myself, I'm no good to anyone. I can't help anybody. But that hasn't happened in all the time I've been doing this. The reality is that depression is a part of my ongoing experience in life, and when that wave comes over me, I do not have the option to say, oh, I'm gonna stop assuming that I can be of any usefulness to somebody because I'm going through a difficult time. This is my job. This is what I do for a living. And it's what I love to do more than anything. It's what I want to do more than anything. It fills me up to the top. I have felt very upset in the past when I've felt like somebody was saying, hey, if you haven't got a perfect score with your mental health and your emotional well-being, you shouldn't be trying to help anybody else. You shouldn't be assuming that you have that ability. I do have that ability. It's been evidenced many times that I have that ability, and I want to be able to use that ability, but I do not want to be silent when things are difficult for me. And if I do need to reach out for help, for support, to have somebody give me a listening ear, I want to be able to request that. And so that's something really good for me that I have been doing over the last few months. And as I mentioned earlier, I have really been getting better at it for the last few years, because in my 20s, I would hide away when I was going through difficulties. And I'd put a lot of my energy and focus into helping other people with their difficulties instead, especially partners of mine. And so I really try hard now to be honest when I'm going through a difficult time. And as I said, because of the nature of the work I do, the nature of who I am, the nature of what I've overcome, yes, there have been times where people in my life have not really taken my call for help seriously. And that's been upsetting. It's been really difficult. However, I think that the difficulty of that experience is far outweighed by the positive effects of being much more honest about when I'm not having a good time, and when I do just want someone to talk to, or I just want to be honest about what I'm going through. So I'm honest about when I have the blues now. I'm honest about when I go through depersonalization and derealization, which I want to talk about in another video soon. I'm honest about these things, and I think that's been really beneficial for me. Wow, that was a really, really long, garbled way of saying that one of the things that helps me is being honest if I'm not having a great time. That was basically what I wanted to say. And I wanted to encourage you to do the same if you feel like that's what you need. If you feel like you need to be a bit more honest, you need to reach out for a bit more support, you need to just be frank with somebody about what you can take on and what you can't take on at a specific time because of mental health issues or because of physical limitations, whatever it might be. If you feel like you're listening to what I'm saying and you're thinking, yeah, I need to be a little bit more forthright, I need to be a little bit more upfront, I need to ask for a little bit more support, I need to at least just admit that something is going on with me because I really haven't said so yet, then maybe now might be a good time. Some of you will remember, sweet peas, because it wasn't that long ago, I don't think, that in one of my videos, I do not remember which one, but in one of my videos, I mentioned that I have started to think less about the value and the importance of working out or exercising, and I've started trying to just categorize everything that is physical movement as just physical movement. The reason for this is because I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to do workouts, to do some form of exercise, to have a very stringent plan, and it wasn't working out really, and I was downplaying the value of things like simply taking a walk, you know? So I would not count that as part of my physical movement, and I wouldn't give myself any props for doing that, even when it was difficult to do, even when I was feeling like I didn't want to go out or whatever, I would go on this walk. But because it wasn't actually breaking a sweat, lifting weights, doing a Pilates session or whatever, I wouldn't give myself the credit for it and I wouldn't count it. So I started trying to think of everything as physical movement and the value of any physical movement at all. So for me now, if it's just a walk around the block, it's 100% better than nothing if I need that physical movement, right? Which is a really important part of my personal regime, my personal routine. I know that it's not that way for everybody, and that's fine. If you're not that interested in physical movement, if you feel like it's not something that applies to you, this isn't something that applies to you, fine. But for me, I feel physical movement obviously has a very positive effect on my mental health and my emotional well-being. So I started to think of everything as just physical movement, and whatever I can do is physical movement, and that's part of it, you know, that counts. And now I'm also starting to think the same way about creativity. So I think I was very stringent and very rigid about creativity being writing poetry, doing collage, making videos. But now I'm starting to think of any little act of invention whatsoever as having really beautiful alchemical creative benefit. So just putting this outfit together, there we go. That was me being creative, and I got something really beautiful out of that. Working on one of my Spotify playlists, perfect. That is an act of invention. That is an act of creativity. Even just kind of like visualizing and planning my day is an act of invention. It's an act of inventiveness, it's an act of creativity. So I'm starting to think of it like that, instead of worrying that it's been quite a while since I was working in my art journal, or it's been quite a while since I was playing around with poetry. Instead, I try to think to myself, I have done something creative in the last hour. I decided this morning that I was going to put different throws on my couch. There we go. That's something creative and awesome that I did that changed up the vibe in this room. You know, it doesn't need to be something super big. It doesn't need to, I don't need to be worrying about bringing my magnum opus to life every 5 minutes. And that's taken a lot of pressure off of me. One thing that I've really enjoyed to do for 2020, one hell of a shit show. Sorry, 2021. One thing I've liked is to have some flippant, fun resolutions. So instead of resolutions relating to, you know, doing massive, juicy, creative things or lists of places that I'm going to visit or whatever, you know, none of that seems even remotely plausible at this point in time. So instead, I've just got these really cute little resolutions that mean something to me. They make me feel joyful and uplifted, but essentially they're just little things. Like, one of my resolutions is to catalogue all of my band t-shirts. So I have a lot of band t-shirts, and I would like to have a photograph of every single one of them and catalogue them all, so I can see exactly how many band t-shirts do I have, what are the bands that I have band t-shirts of, and then I want to keep them in their own part of my wardrobe. So that's a little resolution. It's just something really that I'm going to enjoy doing. Another thing is trying out more eye makeup looks, learning more about how to create certain eye looks and using more of the eye product that I have. So that's just a little cutesy resolution as well. But you know, these things, I think they fill me with a sense of joy and a little childlike glimmer glamour, and I like that. So it's actually nice because there aren't these gigantic big things that I'm holding myself accountable to this year. It's more kind of like, okay, well, I'm just going to do silly little things that I can do in my flat and enjoy, and not feel like there's such a massive pressure on me to do anything that's going to majorly propel me forward. But instead, I'm just going with the vibe of being in stasis that is very much a part of my everyday reality now, by doing little things to pass the time, rather like one would in an Anderson shelter or something. I don't know. Mm. 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 Oh, vanilla chai. What the hell? That is just almost criminally good. I like to fall into a little bit of a weird and wonderful intellectual rabbit hole as well every now and again, where I just go gung-ho for research. And I've found that now that I've got a lot more time, and now that I'm sort of using research as a bit of an emotional well-being tool, I have started researching things that I probably wouldn't have ever researched before. I mean, I am a type of person to get curious about a specific thing that I just start thinking about one night, and I'm like, I wonder how that came to be how it is. I wonder what the story is behind that. But I think that more so in 2020, and now as in 2021 as a continuation, I've just researched things that I just never would have imagined myself researching before. Like a few weeks ago, I got majorly into researching the practice of law. I really wanted to understand why we're tried by a jury of our peers in criminal cases. And I found out that it all dates back to a play from ancient Greece where Athena said that 12 townspeople had to judge. And I was just like, what? It's all Athena? Athena's the reason we do this thing that's like really culturally and politically significant. I started reading quite a bit about the judicial system and how did we ended up having the jury of 12 thing. And that was a really interesting origin story as well. And then I have been researching how accents have become how they are. So why does the American accent sound like it is, like it does and whatnot? And that was really interesting too. So I just have started really following up on the lines of curiosity that I might previously have just sort of left or forgotten about. But actually, you know what? I've got time. It's like that meme gif, that gif that does the rounds. Today I've got time, cuz yeah. Today I've got all the time to learn about that stuff. So that's interesting too. I've just found myself going down into some really interesting, weird and wonderful avenues. And I have decided on a few different things that I would like to research in 2021 that are a little bit more applied, you know. But I'm not going to put any pressure on myself. Like I said, I think that's one of the beautiful things about the way I'm trying to deal with things, is that I'm trying to look at the little things that can give me joy, that can sort of pep me up a bit, without deciding that it's got to be attached to this great big thing. So, because I'm quite ambitious, I think of myself as being quite ambitious, quite go-getting, not in a ruthless way, not like, you know, not against all odds and by any means necessary, but I do think of myself as kind of wanting to do something grand, wanting to do something big, wanting to challenge myself quite often, and always seeing that next milestone and being interested in hitting that next plateau and getting higher and higher with something. And I like the feeling of taking that off of myself and just saying, I'm going to research this, and if I don't want to do any more than that, I don't have to. It doesn't have to lead to some kind of course or some kind of certification or having a dedicated ring binder where I'm going to research more and more and more. It's just, I'm being curious about what I'm interested in, and I'm curious about the ways in which I'm following my nose, but it's much more playful. And it's nice to have that curiosity about myself and what I'm doing and thinking, okay, so that's something that's interesting me today, but it might not be interesting me tomorrow. And you know what? That is okay. I will wake up tomorrow and I will see what is interesting me then. And there is no pressure. So that's been a really useful thing for me. And I hope to be able to take that forward as I go on in life. So these have just been some thoughts, darling, some contemplations on things that have been helpful for me. Hopefully this has given you a bit more of an insight into who I am and what I'm going through if you had wanted that, and hopefully a few things that you can try and apply if needed. I am going to be doing an afterthoughts video that is connected to this video. So my afterthoughts videos are only exclusively for my doll faces and Pop-Tarts on Patreon. And the afterthoughts videos just basically flesh out or dive deeper into the ideas that I've put forth in one of my YouTube offerings. So in the afterthoughts video that's going to be connected to this, I'm going to be talking about sacred rebellion during this difficult, weird and wonderful, wonky, woeful time in our human story. So I'm going to be talking about how sacred rebellion matters more than it ever did and what that can look like when you apply it to your life. I'm also going to be talking about not RSVPing to every shit show you get invited to. And I'm going to be talking about how we can go into debates and interactions with people who we love in our lives who disagree with us in ways that are productive and healthy. And I'll be talking about a few other bits and pieces too. So come and join me over on Patreon as a dollface or as a Pop-Tart if you want to get access to the Afterthoughts video series. And also just check out my Patreon offerings down below. There are 3 different tiers and there's lots of different things on offer. As a Pop-Tart, which is the highest Patreon tier, you do get access to 2 lives with me every month, as well as the Afterthought series, the Love Letters series, Discord access, discounts, and more. So yeah, check that out and see if you fancy coming and being a patron. My book, Rebel Witch, is coming out in April 2021, darlings. So I will leave a list of the places down below that you can pre-order if you are trying to avoid Amazon, which is probably a good idea. And if you favour your own independent bookshop, please do call them and ask them if you will be able to pre-order. And if you would like to order from your favourite independent bookshop in your area, please call them and give them a heads up that you would like them to stock Rebel Witch and you would like to order through them. Also, darlings, if you're watching this at the time of upload, I do have some fresh new things over in my sale section at the online store. So I'm going to leave the sale section down below. You will be able to pick up my Neon Witch course, my Bonds of Shadow course. There are a couple of different readings there that are available. You have got my Sacred Action sessions, my Journal with Me sessions are on sale as well. So yeah, come and have a look, grab something at a reduced rate. And until next time, so much love, darlings, and blessed be. Mwah.